game, talk your shit, grab your gap. Spit your game, talk your shit, grab your gap. Spit your game, talk your shit, grab your gap. On your face. Spit your game, talk your shit, grab your gap. Spit your game, talk your shit, grab your gap. Spit your game, talk your shit, grab your gap. On your
What up, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock and it's time for Talk Yo Shit. What's going on? You already know it's your boy DJ Biggs. Hello. And to my left with her phone going off like crazy.
We have to play for my girl.
Oh God. Hey, it's your girl Snow. What's up? What's going on?
Interrupting the set
You
with
know what I
the
mean?
roses.
You know what? Hold on 1 second.
Crack kills, bro. Crack kills. And you got it all on the
We ain't got no numbers on the screen right now because, you know, you have to watch yourself. You just tell me, say, you get an earcut, my youth, and you kind of want to look by yourself.
Bruh,
So, I think so.
bruh, why you gotta always bring my stuff into
Y'all
it?
drop a comment for Big, so you know y'all.
No, I'm gonna drop a bomb for you.
For that haircut, right?
I'm gonna drop a bomb for you.
For me?
Yeah, cause you don't let me give you. Never mind.
So,
I was gonna give you jackass of the day.
see. I'm gonna come off of the crack on the ass thing. Especially my road.
Yeah.
I'm forward. But
Anyway, so today we have a really special show for y'all.
I'm not on my phone.
now we have
Yeah, you're definitely on your
I'm looking
phone.
at my pussy.
What?
a full child by
That's a lie.
No.
That's a lie.
No.
Why are you lying?
I don't know.
Exactly. She's lying to the people. She was not looking at her phone, guys. She was looking dead at her phone.
Okay, I was looking at my phone. Okay, my bad. I'm done.
In really public places.
Yes. So some crazy places
I
to
like
have
this
sex.
topic.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a whole heap of crazy places.
I wonder.
Look at that stuff. It all starts in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
In a movie theater.
Honestly, I thought I've heard some crazy ones, but then I got the craziest one from my mom. I'm not gonna read. I'm not gonna tell it. But I'm just like, God damn, bro. Like, Ma, for real, Ma.
So his mom basically said he had him in a bush.
What? That's a lie. I am not a bush baby.
Basically, she took dick from the back of the bush.
In the bush.
First of all, y'all ain't gonna talk about my mom taking dick in any bush.
She took the
Open
dick.
up a can of worms.
I want more.
I'm gonna sip on my. By
I
the
was
way,
like,
In the bush.
can you hush? 'Cause she wasn't like that. My mom know how to get. You know what? My mom not gonna be. She knows how to say.
You don't know how to work.
My mom know how to get straight.
Mom, no,
What? That's nasty. That's nasty. My mom don't need to scream and be crazy. She can be a lady.
so she's.
You know what? I'm tired of this. You know what I'm saying? She probably gonna come out her room and start. First of all, no. See y'all some assholes.
First of all, we that loud.
No, she's not
Yeah, she's
loud.
gonna tell us
She's
that
gonna
she's
say that she's a
loud.
lady. Okay, she's gonna say that she
Don't make
does
me
her
pull out.
business.
Don't make me pull out here.
Yeah.
She ain't going nowhere but in that room.
Is she taking dick in there?
What the fuck?
Okay, that's my last one.
You opened the can of worms. and you started explaining too.
Now we know.
My mom can take dick. She's crying when she takes dick.
What?
That's what you
She's
sound
not a
like.
lady, okay? She doesn't take whatever she takes like that.
Discreetly.
Okay?
We're done talking about you about the sucking dick. We're good.
Let's talk about you sucking. As a matter of fact, let's climb up with your girls right now and have them listen to how you act and all of that shit.
You got a velvet throat. That's nice. I heard it.
You know what? You
My
know,
kids and I talk about sucking dick all the
See,
time.
you should have been sipped on that right there. You opened the can of worms.
I mean, 21, 18, and 15.
I love-
15 is not doing anything yet.
I love it. I love it. You know what? I love it. I got you. Watch this. Watch this. Watch this. I'm gonna talk my shit right
What you
there.
about to do, nigga?
Oh, you really don't want to, after the conversation we just had today, you might not want to open your mouth.
Oh, it's not.
Oh, no.
Me?
Yeah, you want to talk your shit?
Welcome to talk your shit.
Right.
Keep opening your mouth.
Yeah, keep opening your mouth about my moms, about all of that.
Listen. So welcome to Talking Shit.
Yeah, no, cut me off. No. Fuck out of here. Look. First of all, I want to send a special shout out to my hookah man. Club King Hookah Man. He makes these really great cups or glasses. You know what I'm saying? Out of like Henny bottles, out of any type of your special bottles.
I mean, shout out. I've been seeing these products, but
I want one.
It always just be one.
Smoothie and a straw and suck it up. Like, you
know
could have at least looked out.
So we get into these public places.
What's fucked up, my dude? Wait, you know what? Let me shut up.
First of all, mind your fucking tone.
Yes.
Cause I'm trying to tell you right now.
I love the way
the ammo that I have right now through this show.
Oh, you got it? Oh, I'm gonna instigate that shit.
It's pew, everybody going down. Yeah, all of that.
Right. Let's get into the topic of the
all right,
day.
let's look at so we kind of prepped 10 places, right?
That, pretty much. About a good amount of places, 10 places that.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't here.
And well, you here now, dude? And we gonna see, whether y'all find these places crazy or you done it already, type of vibe, or what we did. Kind of, so some secrets trying to come out. Like Rick said, he got that bullet for you, so
What?
Yeah.
No, that's not what he.
What?
Wait, you actually bought me a bullet? Because last night I was.
Sheldon does all the buying. I don't know why.
You bought me a bullet? Because I need a bullet.
Shit, ain't no bullet for you.
Oh.
You a prop. Just go stand there. Alright, so
see, as you can see, he always talking his shit and don't even know what he's talking about.
Let's go into
can we get into this? And by the way, y'all go ahead and comment right in the chat there and let us know where's the craziest place you've ever had sex.
Yep, definitely.
I definitely want to hear from y'all, and y'all let me know exactly where you're at. So, what's up?
Alright, so place number 1, right,
is definitely
go ahead.
In a canoe on the water.
On the water.
So I know some of my rednecks in Florida done tried this already in the Everglades.
In the Everglades?
Yeah, they was in the Everglades. It was the alligators. You already know. Hey, shout out to my rednecks, man. I love y'all. I came up in school with y'all.
I was thinking somewhere up north.
No, we ain't giving them the black fist. I did this. The black fist is solid.
Should we do this?
We did this.
What? You do this?
You see that where the thumb is to the side of that? No, bro.
Yes.
No,
right here?
No, bro.
Signs and shit.
No, bro. You see how it's white? Right.
Oh, that's what that means.
Redneck.
Oh. I ain't know that.
You just.
You gotta understand, this nigga's from the short yellow school bus.
Oh, I know you're not talking. Listen, I'm whooped. You talking? Oh, I like you. I like when you keep talking.
So, all right. So none of us have ever tried this.
Actually, honestly, I have not. But it sounds really fucking dope. And the picture that they give us, right, is this dude. No, it's this dude.
It's from the Notebook.
Oh, that's from the Notebook?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. But honestly and truthfully,
it's from the Notebook.
They look like they in Sawgrass. They look like they out in the Everglades somewhere. All right.
I don't think the Everglades. I mean, water's dirty. I don't think that's the best scene for sex right there. It's just kind of the whole mood.
Sex is a
the alligator gonna pop up and bite something off. Like,
we got this.
But I don't know because
canoe riding.
Oh my God.
I don't know if I really want.
First of all, you ever heard the actual song "Rock the Boat"?
Oh shit!
Yeah, don't rock the boat, baby. You know what I'm saying? Don't send the boat over.
Yeah,
you feel me? A canoe, y'all are getting real crazy with this.
Yes.
Seriously, it's small. All right, not big people like myself can do that.
Yeah, it's like.
All right. That's my sentiment. Like, it's a fucking canoe. Like,
there's no space.
How you gonna like? What do you do? Back shot?
Basically, he lays down and she sits down on it and just rides.
They'll go either with like one slip up and they going in the water.
She has to hold both sides so it can balance out.
No, but you can't hold both sides like that. On a canoe, you can't hold both sides like that. You gotta.
Yeah, I guess. What's the next position?
Actually, not the next position, but the next place is an apartment stairwell outside. So basically,
I did that.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I got head on that. I got head on the stairwell before outside.
Apartment outside. I did that.
I'm not gonna lie. That was crazy. That was crazy.
Yeah, because anybody could pass by.
Yeah, like at any time. At any time.
See, now mine was an apartment window close to the outside,
Okay.
where everybody can see.
I'm very boring ass nigga.
Motherfucking boring ass, bitch ass nigga.
For real, big facts.
Mine don't count. It was still inside. Well, nah. I did it in the doorway. I did it in the doorway right on top of the step. That was like the top of the step, so it does count.
No, son.
It was an apartment.
No,
It was stairs.
easy.
The top.
So he's never done it in a canoe or on a stairwell outside.
Yeah, he's just
Okay.
a boring ass nigga.
All right, now here's honestly my favorite because I've actually done it.
Yeah.
And it's dope as hell.
Right.
All right. A computer lab bathroom counter in college.
Computer lab, bathroom counter in college.
Right.
Like computer lab, science lab type vibe.
Yeah, like the whole.
I gotta think
It's a
of
lab.
that time.
That's cool too. That's
I've
cool
actually
too.
done that, but it was high school.
Oh.
Nah, that nigga was always in his class.
No.
I don't think I ever did it there. That nigga was always in his class.
I'm just letting you know it was pretty nice.
No,
That's all I'm gonna say. It was like, you know, that hint of danger, like, yo, you can hear people passing by, but they have no clue what's going on.
Oh wow.
See,
Yeah.
I love the thrill of that shit. I just never done it. Y'all wanna go visit my high school?
Hey, yo, this, now, honestly, I want to see somebody do this next one, because it would be funny as shit. I just thought about the whole scenario, but the next one is an outdoor hammock. Hey, yo, first of all, how you gonna do anything in a hammock anyway?
Other than just lay down and be still.
Right, like you in a cone.
That's talent to actually make that happen. That's
Yo,
talent.
if y'all really is out there
Yeah. Fucking on hammocks.
fucking on hammocks
Fuck
and
me
doing
on
it
a
well,
hammock.
I don't know. You stupid.
Yeah.
Now she hype about it. Now, whoever, hey, listen, she wants it on that.
Jump right on the side and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember your
Yeah,
pop
I've
shops
never
like
done
that.
that.
Yeah, that was dope. That was dope.
Oh,
You could
yeah?
just walk,
And you walk-
you could literally just walk up onto the roof
Yeah,
like
it's
it was
flat.
steps.
Listen.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Jamaica?
No,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Oh.
yeah.
You fucking and you watching people hitting what do you call them things, nines and shit.
Yeah, hitting golf. Cause she live on a golf
Every
course.
time somebody swing and hit something, you gotta put it in hard.
Great.
Yo, that shit was
yo.
really
Next.
like,
Yo, have y'all ever had sex?
that on the roof? Like,
Hold on, wait. Spiral slide on the playground. Hey
Wait
yo.
a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
So we got
Spiral slide on
the
the
number
playground.
the number
I like
5
it.
one. Hold up, we just interjecting and putting one in there.
I wanna know.
Okay, Cass. So what you saying is
I love it.
you don't care about the fucking kids. You on the playground.
Yeah, nighttime.
Sometimes it was a night or day.
It was nighttime, right, Cass? Tell us it was
So
nighttime.
they gotta kind of considerately be public, but I mean, I
Well, it's
understand.
still public.
Tell us it was nighttime. Come on.
Windows be watching.
Come on, Cass. Answer the question. Nighttime, please.
Nighttime.
I want to know. I want to know if it was
No
nighttime.
judgment.
Or
Get your
if-
fuck on. Get your fuck on.
It was shit. It was
I'm
daytime. You
trying to get
trying
everything into a song tonight.
a damn pole and shit. This was happening. This was happening. I don't even know. This slide. This was happening. You feel me?
Hey,
Nah,
yo, that's what's
It's
up.
like, I want some dick, and I don't give a fuck where.
It's gonna be on this green spiral slide
Yes, nigga.
right here. We gonna go from the top and hit all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, you wear some skirts around me. That's happening.
Yo, hey, yo,
What's
that's
the next one?
the next one is the backseat of my boyfriend's Jaguar at a wedding during the reception.
Now,
Yeah.
see,
So,
I do that.
I don't-
y'all are wedding crashers.
That's-
That's number one.
Yes.
I got close to it, but I didn't.
Nigga, you're really
you know what I do at weddings?
No, it was my aunt's. My aunt.
Nigga, you're
Chantal's-
real experienced.
No, I'm not experienced. I'm just saying.
Nigga, you real
Know a little
experienced.
something about weddings and crashing pussies.
Real experienced.
Y'all ain't never seen the movie Wedding Crashers?
Nah, we see it. I'm just saying.
It's just
I
that
bet you got a story about this.
most of the places you've been there, done that. You real experienced.
First of all, I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a Jaguar. Okay.
Not that part, but
Okay?
You know,
At the wedding during the
It's
reception,
Jaguar, by the way.
yeah, Jaguar.
There you go.
The Jaguar.
The Jaguar.
one of the things I love to do at weddings is just say me I'm too greedy.
Wedding food sucks.
Now the people in food.
Fucking sucks.
Listen, right? It's just kind of watch the bridesmaids and just see, all right, she ain't coming no man. She ain't with no man.
Yeah, don't
That's how you
invite
crash.
Sheldon to a wedding.
That's how you
He will
crash
not be
out.
coming to mine. Yeah, I know. It's about to go down with
I
this
want
next
to
one.
try that.
All right, bring the next one.
No, the next one is definitely the waterfall at a state park. Now, being that I'm also Jamaican and I've experienced Dunn's River Falls, I've never done it, but
I never thought
it'd definitely be
But
dope.
having some nice ass puddle in the rocks.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say.
Get
It'd
away
definitely
with
be dope to try, because nobody would know what you were doing under these little, like, they're almost like stairs done in
Exactly.
falls.
Yeah.
You go up,
Yeah.
and
So
then
you can
stop.
just be in a thing and you just be like, hey babe, yeah, hey, how you doing? How you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
Just
And the water
swirling
be
and
mad
shit.
warm too.
Just swirling and shit
You know
like.
what I mean?
Damn.
So honestly, I'm definitely trying that.
Yeah.
I'm going to
So
say I'm
definitely
trying
trying that.
Yes.
All right, cause no,
Yeah, why?
don't they allow nudity on James Bond Beach? I could have
James
sworn
Bond?
they did.
One of them. We got
Because the Dunn's River Falls.
You know, grill.
Yeah, no, not in. It's in Ochi, bro. It's in Ocho Rios. But James Bond Beach, doesn't the Dunn's River Falls run? Yeah, I believe it does into James Bond Beach.
I'm not sure, but I know that
I could've
hedonism
swore.
is in.
Oh, in the grill. Yeah, we know. We already
That's
know.
all nude beach.
First of all,
Straight
any resort in Jamaica, just know that if you're going down there and it's all
Yeah.
inclusive, you're definitely fucking
Yeah.
all the way through that trip.
Gonna have some fun.
Okay,
And
it
I
just
mean,
when you get
Not
off.
all the trips.
some type boom boom yeah, is it? Just try to
Yo.
bring nobody.
Oh!
Jamaica is supposed to be a great fuck fest, but for some people,
No, at least when I smell the air, it make me feel horny. So I forget about everything else. Like
as soon as I saw the hotel, I saw the water, I saw the people. I just wanted
I
to
just stepped
fuck
off
up
the
store,
plane.
but
I
it
just
worked
stepped
out.
off the plane.
I didn't go with the right
And-
people.
Most people want to
it'd be-
smoke.
Right.
Especially with the right person.
All right, if y'all
planes.
what?
I said you might as well bring you the next one. We talking about planes.
I just said step off the plane. Damn,
Yeah.
you gave him we already gave him that heavy stuff. So number 8, all right, is on an aeroplane.
I've never done that.
All right. So basically, I think that's pretty G. If you can pull this off.
I can't.
I've only seen it in the movies.
Right?
Okay.
Here's my thing, right? It all based on. Okay, so I'm not really a small, skinny guy. So it all
Yeah, I don't
based
see
on
myself
and
fitting in that goddamn thing.
That
with
shit
somebody
is a
else.
cube.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not even a-
You gotta turn in the same spot, like.
Right. It's not even a cubicle.
Like it looks
You know what I'm
boring
saying?
on the movies and shit, but like you try to do it, you gonna have some
I don't-
complications, and I like.
I don't
that
want to
shit.
fuck in a bathroom stall. I just want to give head on the airplane. Just cover my
I
head
mean,
up.
if
while
you're
I
like
do
the
this
only
thing.
one in first class and shit.
No, not even first class. Doesn't matter. Just cover my head up.
That
Hey,
would
I'm
actually-
taking a nap on your lap.
That would probably
You're
be
mine.
a dope.
I'm taking a nap.
I'm taking a nap on
That would
you.
actually like the coat is over and everything. That would probably be a dope like.
Fuck yeah.
Crazy enough
Like
to
you
try.
going to Greece or some shit, and then you just
Long ass.
Long
Right.
ass flights.
yeah, and you know in first class they got the big seats, and then you know they got the draw screen, so all of the economy class can't see you.
I was just talking
They
about
give you
how
the blankets,
it doesn't
too.
matter.
Right. They give you all the, but yeah, they do.
The
give
long
you
flights, you
all
get the
that.
blankets. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We
There
can
you
give each
go.
other head.
Okay,
I go
now,
first
yeah.
and he goes second.
Oh shit! I'm getting some ideas around this
Where
motherfucker.
your leg gonna be at?
Just like
Like that.
Hey, I don't know. I'm getting some ideas.
in my book.
That
Okay.
was a surprising chapter.
Okay, we gonna get to number 9, which is one of my favorite ones. Cause yes, I have done this.
What? What?
Yes, everybody has done this. I don't care.
What is
At
this
an,
fucking shit?
at an apartment community pool in the daytime.
Does your
Damn.
uncle pool does your uncle pool count?
I
Huh?
have
Does
not.
your uncle pool count?
Nah, that don't count. That's a private.
It's-
And first of all,
it's
why
daytime.
are you mentioning that stuff? Like, yo, bro, you like to
That's half of the segment.
He's supposed to be
in
a
the
criminal,
daytime,
and he just be throwing people under. You a snitch. You work for the DEA, feds.
That was
You know what I'm saying?
Listen.
You just leaking all kind of past information and indiscretions, bro.
Alphabet spell pussy.
That's crazy. That's messed up. It's called, we can't tell you nothing no more.
I was experiencing it. I'm talking about my own experience. How can I snitch on my experience?
And then because you asked, wasn't your uncle's pool? What kind of shit is that?
What is it in here? They heard now.
No, they definitely heard. They definitely heard. I don't care what nobody
I'm
says.
gonna tell you something, man. He got a G-ass family. They ain't worried about that.
It ain't never gonna go down here because of you. You know? And you got 2 houses with dope pools.
Oh yeah?
Dope decks.
You know a long time when I see you.
Nah. You ain't going to the new one.
Can I hear the damn next one, please?
What? Why are you just so horny? Look at you. Just
Yo, first of all, hey boy, starve it. Keep starving it.
frustrated.
You know what I'm saying? Nah, you wanna know why? Nah, I'm gonna talk my shit because now she definitely. Where my chat went? I want to see if anybody else.
Frustrated.
You know, I want to see if anybody else commented. Yo, y'all comment and let me know where's the craziest place. I ain't gonna say who said this, but the craziest place from what I heard from somebody was a baseball dugout. I was like, oh word, that's old school
I've
shit.
done that.
That is.
No, you done that?
Yeah.
Which baseball field, boy?
Popper, nigga.
Oh, you went to Piper and did it. You want to know why I know you a lot? Because they got cameras in there, boy. They been had cameras in there, boy.
Nigga, from your northern baseball field, you know the baseball dugout where everybody sit at?
Yeah.
Before they get switched out in the game? Nigga, people been fucking in there. What you talking about?
Alright, bro.
I ain't know. First of all, somebody introduced me to it. I ain't know what. Oh, damn.
I wasn't
fucking in
stupid.
there.
You know what I mean? I got offered to go do that, and then I looked up, saw that camera, and I saw that red light. You did.
I don't know what
You
you're talking about.
bro.
Nobody ever called me up for no camera. Nothing. We fucking there.
Yo, you
And
just
that
said
little hallway
said the whole thing.
I'm just saying.
All right,
I
so
ain't
the
going
next
no
one we
more.
gonna go to is a number 10. Now, honestly, I don't think this is really like public, because it's not like it's really that public. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think it is though.
No, it's really not.
It kind of is.
It's the office
Yeah.
during work.
Yeah.
First of all, it's just y'all two. It's really not public. I mean, it's public on the outside.
During work, I mean, what if you have like a glass window? Somebody could like walk by and
You
see
would
that
always have shades on that type of glass.
shit.
Because
I done did some shit, man.
I feel you, but like I said, it's still not really public. Would you call it public? You would call it public? Like, for real?
It's a public place because.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it's in a
Yeah.
building or public city, but it's still like a
Like on the
first-
street,
Like,
type of public. That's what you mean.
yeah, bro. Everything else was like, you know what I'm
It's
saying?
still sheltered. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like a catch-22 on that
This time
one.
was the last one.
After you go
No,
down,
it's not the last one.
So it stays.
Oh, this is nasty.
That is nasty.
Now this is very, very nasty.
Take
And
it off him first.
and
Turn it on.
you see the name that said it?
Yeah.
The name that said it. The next one we got.
I'm sorry. Cassidy said that it's both night and day.
Oh, it's
And
not
on
there
the
on the
swing.
playground?
And on the swing.
Oh, you fucked on the swing? Explain that to me.
Hey, Sita, what's up, boo? On the
First one.
swing. That's pretty simple.
No, that's really nice. That's actually really nice.
Trying to think
It's
about
like a
that.
set swing.
Yeah, you could actually lay like this
Yeah.
and then from the back, or you could actually.
That's genius. That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up.
Oh, you lay on it and I'm standing off
Yeah,
the
that's
swing.
exactly.
Okay.
No, he just wanted to see you get up because he did it again. Like,
No, I'm just
you know what I'm
trying.
saying? I'm just trying to visual. Nutty cross.
What's that? It'll just step up a stitch.
I'm a snitch because you snitching.
By me.
No, because I'm snitching because you try to snitch. Alright, so with this next one, the 11th one is so nasty.
It is.
Porta potty.
That's why I put it on the screen.
Now I'm gonna tell you right now, if your husband is in construction, you married to a construction worker,
Yeah.
you can't lie. I know one of y'all done did it already. You're nasty. You're nasty. Alright?
I do it on a porta potty. I'm sorry. It's just.
You pulled up to a porta potty before? Though?
No.
At a fair or something like that?
No.
I never used
But
them.
if
I
my
always
man
feel
wanted
weird.
to, I would. Anything for my man.
Nah. That's OD. You going too far.
You
No.
might find something in there. I mean,
No, I'm sure he's gonna
First
go
of
look
all,
at it.
first of
Make
all,
sure it's
porta
clean
potties.
for us.
First of all, porta potties
Getting a lot of
smell.
hand
They come in smelling like feces.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I
odor
personally
is
have
a
never
big
used a
part of
porta
sex.
potty. Like I just can't do it because I'm too bougie. But
But if your man want to do it,
but when I'm horny, the booze just comes out.
what you gonna do is just stuff your nose with some shit.
No, but I'm sure he's gonna find one that's
She gonna get some toilet tissue. Nasty ass.
I'm way too nasty for me outside.
Nah, son.
I don't know.
Nah, you OD. You
He'll,
just.
he'll find a clean one for us.
All right, so that was the last one.
That was the last one in position. Listen, comment, let us know what are y'all craziest places you had sex. You know what I mean, publicly, since we can't do inside office buildings.
That was the
Okay,
craziest
so
place
I'm gonna
I've
tell you.
been.
I'm gonna tell you the craziest place I went. It was public and everything. You see, right in front of like, all right, you know where Pamonti's is on Fort Lauderdale Beach. You know the pizza place. The pizza-
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
A pizza place on the beach.
right.
Got it.
No, but
Yeah,
a lot of
out
people.
there.
No, a lot of people go by there.
Yeah.
And you know I used to drive the
Yeah,
truck,
good
so
pizza.
I had an ex that like we just put down the tailgate, and she had a dress on, and it just looked like I was chilling in between her legs, but really we was, you know what I'm saying?
You was hunching it.
Just hunching it heavily. It was crazy.
I like that tailgate too, 'cause it reached body length.
right. It reached right there.
You know, it was just
But people were walking by. Hey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Everything good? Yeah. All right. You don't even know. You just don't even know.
We don't care. We were just gonna get in there.
And she just acted like she holding me and yo, this shit was too funny.
I like that type of shit.
What about you?
Damn. I still gotta say the highway, man, because that was just epic for me.
Hold up, it was a highway while you was moving?
No, I come out the car, she was playing with me, and I was like, you better stop, because if you
Wait,
get
y'all
stopped,
pulled
I'll take
over
that.
on the side of the
On
highway?
the side of the highway, 595, nigga, airport.
Yo, that is major highway patrol there.
I know, that's the
I
crazy
can't
part.
believe it.
You know what it is though? I realize people can't
Roddy, what's
see
up,
you
boy?
too well.
Hey, Roddy, welcome. What's
People
up,
can't
Roddy?
see you too well
Roddy and Hard.
when you got what?
Roddy, he's
You
on
gonna
and
throw me
hard.
off with that shit.
Go ahead.
Hey, we don't need to know the conversations that you and Roddy be talking
You
about.
so stupid. Stop it.
I'm just saying.
I'm trying to figure out
When you're talking about moms and shit. Fuck you up. Yeah. Let's talk your shit right now.
Like, you talk bad, crazy shit.
You like that though? Yeah. You don't want to play with it.
First of all, she did want a long distance relation. I don't know. Did you get that? Roddy, that's some long year.
Nah, son.
Right
Oh,
there.
nah, son. We got what's the other dude that be in love with her here too? Like this?
The guy with the name y'all like to say.
Nah, toxic too. You know what I'm saying?
His ass too.
His ass
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Be having long, hard conversations
Oh,
with your
right.
fans.
Oh, see, Roddy done better than me. He said on saw grass doing 80.
Oh, what? Yo,
Yo,
why
sorry.
can I believe that though?
Like driving it ahead, yes, but I don't know nobody wants to ride on the
No. But Roddy though, Roddy's a
I
driver
believe
like
him.
myself. That's why I'm trying to tell you.
I
Like,
believe him. This nigga don't even pay attention to red lights.
right? He's just wrong. He's like, I don't care. Ain't nobody coming.
I'd be like, Roddy, the light is red. It's a suggestion.
You ready? I true enough to Trinity.
Can't say
spit, just
definitely
swallow.
gotta get head.
First of all,
See?
I don't spit, I don't swallow, I don't do anything. I consume.
I just-
Don't come to this fuckery with me. You understand me?
Is it my turn?
Why for you? No, it's not your turn.
Okay.
You can sit on this.
Well, I fear after one year, fear
You know, are we going?
Well, mine are not crazy places. So one of them was outside at a park, leaning against a police car.
Wait.
Okay, I heard police car. Now I'm good. Now I'm good. She started off real boring, then it's hard.
So we were having sex outside. It was kind of like, okay, whatever. But now I want to make it exciting, so I said leaning against the police car. And that's when it really got hot.
So you had sex on a police car?
Yes.
Was it with the policeman?
No, it was not. It was with my boyfriend at the time.
Where's the cops at?
They were eating, I guess.
In the car?
No.
Y'all like soda?
Yeah.
No, I gotta know these things.
I knew
Maybe you had the dash cam on y'all ass and you didn't even know.
Who gives a fuck? But he
We
was
gonna
like,
search.
I think he went and got a slice of pizza or something. Because it's a beach where, there's restaurants and stuff.
Yeah.
Deerfield?
On the beach too.
No, it's Hollywood actually.
Oh, so she was on the boardwalk.
Shit.
She on the boardwalk. Yeah, she getting slid down on the boardwalk, right next to Haagen-Dazs. On the stage.
There's another one.
Yeah.
This one's simple. We were having sex in the car. He was
Yeah.
driving stick and I was riding him while he was driving. We pulled up to the toll place and we paid our toll and kept fucking.
Yo, that's a lot of brain work. Huh?
No, for real, he's a beast.
Shit.
Hold up, first of all, he had pedal to the metal, and he's switching gears while he's there.
You feel me?
Hold on, let me slow down, let me get out.
He was exactly this, like
Especially
this. We pulled up and I was like, here you go. She was like,
Hey yo, clap it up. Beast mode for you, boy. I know you get a salute from me. Stick, driving stick.
Why you doing that?
Why you
fucking him?
no.
No, bro, it's fun.
I'm just saying.
No, you didn't hear what she said. She stopped at the toll booth. They had the toll to go.
It's still riding.
It's still riding.
My boy is a beast. I need to shake your hand. I need to know who you are.
Yo.
You just raw like that.
Like so when you
What about me? It was one, yeah.
Nah, he's doing real work.
Right, he doing the real work
right there.
First of all, he got to make sure that it's still up.
Right.
He got to focus on 3 different things: the dick, urine, the steering,
While shifting, what we're right.
right, with pedaling, with clutching.
I'm still enjoying
And
it.
then have the audacity to reach for 75 cents. Hey, go!
I reached for 75 cents.
Oh, you did that part.
And then, like,
Okay.
I was on top of him like this, and I was covered. He was holding me. I was like, no, stop. And I was like, here you go. She was like,
I know she done had something to tell her people. Like,
Yo, even Roddy said, hold up, I'm a driver, but stick with it. Stick with it. See what I'm saying? I don't care what nobody say. That one right there was the best one for me. I'm not even gonna lie
That
to you.
nigga is epic.
That one,
I'm saying.
just all because, and I know,
Hands down.
honestly, no funny gay shit, real talk, bro. You that nigga, bro. You that nigga. I don't care. Nobody can say they did that because then I know that they just bullshit.
And you hear what she said? This one was a simple one.
yeah, it
For
was
you.
simple.
Nah, you see how that's fucked up?
So
I have
let me
another
ask you one question.
I have another
When he stopped, did he do that and jerk with it?
Who paid the toll and you reached out and paid? Paid with the nothing face. Hey yo,
We didn't get to that
Roddy.
point yet. We made it to the house, got out of the car naked, and went upstairs naked, and kept going.
What?
Yeah,
Yo, that's trill. I'm ready to try. Somebody let me borrow that stick.
I got that trill love.
I'm not doing it. I don't care what kind of insurance I got. No.
I'm gonna be there every
I don't
time in the
care.
parking lot first. Let's try.
I'll be mad as fuck. I'm gonna talk about I'm on the turnpike, B.
Listen,
It's okay, I don't have to stop for the toll. They're gonna pay my plate. Nah, it's all good. I'm gonna
because I know fucking
Yeah.
haters that go on the highway. Sometimes I don't even remember that I'm going fast. I used to drive a BMW. You know what that feels like. Like I don't even know I'm going fast. Like when did my foot became heavy? The head got good. You feel what I'm saying? Listen, I'm telling you, boy, you a beast. Like I give it to you hands down,
Yeah.
for real.
bro, like that just like, yo, that was a whole new different, like, that, he's
Yeah.
definitely the savage of the year. Like, I can't even really think about nothing better than that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to, I know how to drive stick very well.
I can't be that.
I know, that's what I'm trying to make sure.
Nah, I can't. Nah. Ask every week.
No, but where we at? You know where we at, boy. Stop playing in that. You ain't never been there, boy. Like, I'm not gonna even.
We
ain't gonna answer that no more. You saw how I gave you the old island,
Nah, you feel
the
like
old
driving.
island
All at the
lady.
same time. Wait, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Fuck your eyes.
Fuck out.
Oh, fuck Kyle. Oh, don't start that shit again.
So listen, we go with this right here because it's about to go on. We gonna pay some bills and then we gonna come back with the sex position of the week. I might have to change it to that car seat. That shit. This nigga, you got the man drink. Let's go to commercial. We'll be back.
I need another drink fucking with you.
I'm going to be at Fantasy Nova launch party.
FantasyNova.com for all things adult play invites you to come out and play. June 23rd, get a free toy with your ticket. See you there.
Alright, so we are back.
And honestly,
Welcome back.
What's up? We have to calm that down for a second.
alright, here's the thing. I'm not gonna talk on this segment. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna let you know, like I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Roddy said he feels like driving. I hear you, Roddy.
I'm pretty sure she hears you, Roddy. Y'all having long, hard talks and shit.
Fuck that.
Are you up? Yeah. You getting it the whole show. Okay.
So
Full disclosure.
no, ain't no disclosure, no disclaimer.
There is no
We gonna let wandering minds know. Yes, nigga. So to this sex position thing,
I got you though.
you ain't got me. You
I
got
got you.
yourself. What I'm trying to say is,
gonna need a refill by the way.
okay, you fucking with the right one
Let
right
me
now.
pour you a drink.
No, you ain't gonna poison me like some Snow White motherfucking shit. Looking like the Wicked Witch in the West and shit. No, you ain't gonna have me fucked up in here. And then I'm looking at a fucking position that's named the casket. Oh no! Got me fucked up. That's why I said I got a problem with this shit. Alright, the position look but the position look dog as fuck. It look dope as shit. But why you gotta name it the casket? Is she gonna be dead by the time you die?
Yo, when I
I'm gonna be dead by the time I'm
Because
done.
they're killing each other. Like,
No.
When I first saw it, the only thing I can attribute it to was, he's just killing the pussy.
Yeah,
And, she just gotta go ahead and lay it
I'm
down.
definitely
But you gotta name it the casket, nigga. You know how terrified I am of caskets? You know that when I go to funerals, I don't even go by the casket that much?
Wait, check this out. Babe, I was trying a new position today. Oh yeah, maybe what? The casket.
You're done. Run for your life. My girl can never tell me what shit. Hey babe, I want to try the casket. No, rename it something else.
If you and your
I'm not doing it.
If
No.
you and your spouse fight, don't even bring that position.
Yeah. What the fuck?
My nigga.
Yeah, we doing the casket.
My nigga.
Fuck you mean we doing
Watch
it?
and see.
No, we ain't doing the casket. We want to do the I want to live. Next thing you know, she we gonna go from the casket to the tombstone.
Next thing.
Fuck out of here. No. I'm not like, I don't like, look, I like the form.
I like the form, I must say.
And alright, I've said enough about my piece,
The
but
casket is
the name of the shit,
yeah.
it just got me. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, nigga, you got to, it's not death, nigga, it's death. You hit this shit twice, you ain't gonna hear shit. No, nigga, got shit to do today, type shit. I wanna live.
Oh man, you on a roll, fam.
No, bro, I wanna live, fam. Now you OD right now, bro. Like, no, this shit got me hella hot. Cause you know what's funny?
What do y'all think about it?
No, the position, that's why I say it got me hella hot, cause the shit look dope as fuck.
It does.
It does.
Okay? Not just that,
what would you call it?
but the dude's just working the biceps while working the core.
You feel what I'm
You
saying?
feel what I'm saying, bro?
Like,
She's working her biceps as well. No,
That's
real
not-
shit.
but that- alright, what would you
I'll
call
look
it?
at
What would you call it?
What I would call it the gym.
I would call it the Kaepernick.
He's on one knee, yo. I like that. We changed it from the casket to the Kaepernick. All right, I don't care. And she's like in a kind of a check.
You feel what I'm saying?
I like that. She's in the Nike
You
position.
are the yoga bastard.
Right. We gonna give you that one, but nah, the casket shit, scratch that out. We gonna call it the Kaepernick.
We need to salute this nigga. Ready?
Right.
1, 2, 3.
I already did it, right? Fucking.
That's it.
No, but for real, like this shit is dope. Cause not only that, but
Yeah.
y'all can like kind of move with it,
I
like
like
wherever
that.
y'all need to move with it.
Exactly.
It's like the reverse,
You know what I mean?
like back, like.
And if she can walk on her hands,
No,
that's
but, no,
even
but what I'm trying to say is y'all already know the wheelbarrow. Y'all know that shit. So it's easy for her. Whoop, whoop. Like she ready to go anyway. Like anyway you ready to go.
I like
Get off that.
and she can do some sit-ups right
We
there.
know you got an Apple Watch, nigga. Where's her phone? Put her Apple Watch over there. You thought it was good?
I thought it was a joke. He got you on this one.
You know what I'm saying? We on the air. You want to be on the Apple Watch? Like, yeah, I got you, babe. Yeah, I know you watching. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna put you in the casket when I get
It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen again. Oh, he gonna text back casket. Oh shit! Fuck around with me.
this that.
No, but
that burn
here's the
position.
most important part that I like about this shit.
Yeah.
Now, if a girl's like, you know, the like little joint in between the feet, like where the foot and the leg connects,
Yeah.
she has her feet like this around the man's neck.
Yeah.
So, depending on like how she can like,
How
yo,
long
she
the leg
can.
is.
Oh
That's what I'm
my
saying. She can do
god.
so much, right? Listen.
Yo!
She take it off the ground and be
But-
like, sit up
but-
while I'm doing that shit. I'm just saying.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to say. He can actually let go and she can still be right there, like, busting it down, Tatiana type shit. Hey, yo, honestly, I salute the position, not the man.
I like it. We like it. I ain't see that.
Fuck out of what? Why you?
I ain't see what you did. What happened?
I bet.
She throwing a touchdown right now for this position.
It's all good. It's all good. Honestly, yeah, so like I said, not only is it fun to do, y'all can actually
Yeah,
try
that's
it.
good.
Actually, small people and big people can use this shit. This is dope as
it's a
fuck.
sexy ass position. I love it.
I think it's nice.
No, because it gives enough
We
clearance.
should all try it.
It gives a lot of clearance. Like if you look at it, you wanna fuck around? I'm gonna try that shit. I'm gonna die trying. I'm gonna die trying.
Doing the cap.
You know what I'm
They're
saying?
gonna end up in the casket.
And you know what you want to end up in? I'm gonna tell you what you want to end up in.
No, please don't.
You know what I'm saying? My mans. Hey yo, my mans in B-Town, boy, Beantown. And we talking about you in Dorchester. We know where you at, nigga. See this one right here? She need to be put under some serious punishment. She need to think
Yeah.
about what she been doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Boy, I see.
So no, I'm a
Documentary.
yeah, all of that. You know what I'm saying? Cause she wanna act up.
Yeah.
Next topic.
That one, the casket. Not more.
No, honestly, yo, I think it's really dope. Cause first
Yeah,
of all,
it's
you
dope.
get your curls on, like your,
Yeah, that shit's
like
mad
your,
nice.
like, my dude, you get the curls on, like that's what's up.
So we gonna go into the
Yeah,
porn star
let's
of
get
the week.
big.
Right? Y'all ready for this?
So we gonna go to the porn star of the week.
I mean, now see what she doing for y'all. See what she doing for y'all.
Yes.
You know.
I like that it's interactive.
Yes.
Now.
I just, you wanna know what's funny?
That's a
Yeah,
big
alright.
I think I know why you chose this one.
Why I chose
I
it?
think I know
Let me see.
All right, I'm gonna tell you why I think.
Because
she
the last
chose
one I chose, y'all went in. So
honestly,
So I wanna hear it.
this one is still, but
Right.
she's high school. Yeah, right. You feel me? No. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, we gonna get an outside source later on.
I want to hear
But hold
your
up.
true opinion. Go
Yo,
ahead.
honestly, y'all need to go ahead and in the chat and tell me what y'all really think about this. Like, not only that, but she ain't even got like. First of all, if y'all go wind your waist, my girl, please wind your waist, papa.
The loop ain't
No,
finished
I
yet,
know,
so
I
she
know.
going all the way.
But hold up, hold up.
I ain't explaining shit. She fine. Fuck
She
y'all.
looks like the common white girl out of an
Yes, the girl
everyday
next
high
door.
school.
With
Yeah,
ass.
the girl next door.
No, she don't have. We can't see no ass.
Not from that picture, but she got
Okay,
ass.
hold up.
If
Hold
you
on,
turn off
time
the light,
out. Let me ask you a question. Don't she look like a white girl from out of Coral Springs, from Coral Springs High or
does.
Terraville High, right?
She does.
That common chick. Yes, exactly. She's the chick down the street that's gonna give you the top
Yes.
and give you the bottom
Yes.
right away.
Does that stop her from
All you gotta do is text the slide.
Right.
And she's there.
She does look like
At least
that,
she making
yes.
money doing that right now.
That's why he picked her.
Nah.
Now,
What? That move
beautiful.
is kind of sexy though.
That move is white girlish, okay?
Right,
I want to see the way I wear Sharon. You know what I'm saying? How far move your
I know
butt That is not a boomerang. That is more like a
Orang?
right. That's not even a boom.
That's a orang.
That's a ang. That's not even a rang. It's not even a. That's not even a rang. That's a ang. That's an ang.
All right, it's safe to say she didn't get the swish swish growing up, but she ain't the hula hoops.
I bet you she gets some good ass dome though, boy.
Listen.
She probably said
If
she
you
was
watch her
fire.
movie, if you watch her movie,
She looked like she wear flip flops, like she just stepped out of the trailer park.
she's an artist actually.
She's an artist.
Yeah.
Tell us about her artistry.
I've never seen Danny Daniels.
On the Kira Lee.
I've seen Stormy Daniels,
I've
but
seen Danny.
Because that's her real name.
you've seen her.
Listen, Danny Daniels is fucking awesome in porn. First of all, that name Danny came from her ex as a revenge.
Yeah.
That's how she came to name.
Wow.
Right? She got into porn like fuck you, nigga. I'm just gonna name myself Danny. Then
Wow.
it was that type of.
I bet you
right?
fucked up over that. Ain't you, Danny? If
Yeah,
you tell the truth, Danny, you
I
done fucked
fucked
up.
up porn like
Do we have a sound for that? That sadness?
that damn Danny.
No, I'm not gonna do it. Because
And
That nigga in a casket.
he got the casket. Matter of fact, I think he got the casket in the tombstone.
So later too, yeah.
Straight up. Here lies that nigga, Danny.
Listen,
You know he fucked up.
she's one of the girls that like she's one of the girls. When she first started, she only did like females. Man, when she went into male, I was like, yo, this bitch can fuck on camera like real fucking nice, and she keep her bush.
You like
She's
Bush?
one of them that I
No,
don't
if it's
necessarily.
trimmed bush,
She make it look nice.
I'm not gonna lie. Like yo, y'all be
I don't
making
like
too
her
much
bush. I don't like
issues
her
over
bush.
the hair.
You just don't like
No,
bush.
here's what I say, bro. Like real shit, and y'all need to let me know in the comments because I know it's off topic, but I need to bring it up. Is hair really a problem? If it's groomed, if it's clean, I don't want no George W. Bush. I don't want no shit that I gotta put a weed whacker to.
Like a beard?
Yeah, like this shit. If you got what I got on my face,
Weren't you warned not to touch it?
and yeah, please don't touch my beard. You know I got a problem with that. No, for real, because I was so focused.
Because you finish your drink.
Right, I was so focused on delivering the punchline, and this nigga got a
Hey,
free
bartender! Get that nigga to the drink.
Hey, one day we gonna have a bartender. Fuck that bullshit. You just gave me the idea.
That's
Hey, bartender!
I got a perfect person too.
You do? Hey.
But anyway, so like, so what I'm trying to
Smoothies.
no, but for real,
Yes, sir.
why do people make such a big deal about hair? Like, if it's first of
Yeah.
all, if it's at a low level, if it's groomed, and you don't stink, what's the problem?
Just the odor, like, why was you ain't got a stinky smell on that? I'm good. You know.
No,
what I
I've
mean?
heard people it gotta be bald. Nah, boy.
I just
And then-
don't like bush all out of it. You know, the side of it be all like, where's the symmetrics?
You like pretty bush.
What's going on?
Yeah, he likes
I
PCB.
can with the bush and no bush, but I'm just saying, it's like, where's the cuteness? Pussy
Yeah,
got-
it do. It do got a lot. That's why I said it has to be well groomed.
You know what I mean? I'm a man and I groom myself. So, you feel what I'm saying? Like,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
you know what I mean?
Please, men, groom yourself.
All day.
See, the one that want the baby dick. You know the baby. You know what I'm talking about. That shit got to be smooth like a baby's butt. It got to have no hair.
But-
Yeah, because I don't want to choke on your hair when
Truth
I'm
be
sucking
told, truth
on
be
the
told
balls and on the
though,
dick.
truth be
Like,
told though,
I like
because
to lick around
You-
that area too.
you
where the
you
penis is.
do have a
truth be
point.
told,
Okay.
Yes,
because I
I
record
know.
myself at times.
You right. You don't want to be coughing up a hairball. I got you.
Exactly.
Truth be
I got
told, she does a better job when it's shaved. They do. They go all in when it's shaved.
That does make sense.
They go all in.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
They go all in on it.
They got a point.
Yeah.
I got a point.
It makes
But-
you want to just.
Yeah,
You got a point.
guys. So don't just tell your girl, not to do something with their bush, and you'll be all rusty.
Me-
Nah, y'all gotta be
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
grown. Y'all gotta be well grown. You understand?
You know
You
what I mean?
understand?
Something.
Yeah. Little cute fat boy,
You
fat
shave
nigga
chest,
around
too.
this
I
motherfucker.
don't like your hair.
They like the hair test.
Yeah, no, that's kind of. You wanna know? I used to have an uncle that looked like a monkey when he took his shirt off. I swear to God. God rest his soul. I love you. And the thing, you wanna know the funniest part is that my Uncle Neil was so cowboyish. Like, this is a man that sat in the White House and had dinner with Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alright? But he's from Jamaica,
Yeah.
grew up in Jamaica, left Jamaica, and went all the way up to him passing away. You would have swore he was like from Texas or some shit.
That's so
No, I'm talking about some
Type shit.
country ass type
Wow.
part of Texas.
Old
Yeah.
Town Road.
Hey Alex, how you doing there, buddy?
He changed his whole identity.
I was like, yo, where the nigga came from? Nigga, you from Manchester, Jamaica, in the hills, boy. You grew up riding horses and shit. But I understand. No, but after he saw the white niggas, yeah, man, you know, you gotta understand something, man. Like, I'm like, what? You went full cowboy and everything. I expected him to come out with a hat, cowboy boots, and 6-shooters. I swear to God, the way he fucking talked.
Yeah.
I love it.
That shit was too funny, bruh.
God rest his
I
soul.
swear, but I love, hey, Uncle Dale, I love you, man. But that shit was always funny,
So
man.
let's see. Let me get some comments. Roddy say he love it ball, but here's okay if it's maintained.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, true. You know, you have to trim up the thing. You see.
Gotta have
And I got a kid, so if y'all come out, we're gonna go to work, put on my little dust mask.
I have no hair on my skin.
You know they have a barbershop that you can get. It's in, I think it's in New York or something.
I saw
Where
that.
you can
I thought
get,
it was a joke.
where men or women can go to get.
I saw
It's like a
video.
barbershop, and you have the actual chairs, and this nigga is. I was like, whoa, that's too much. That's too much. First of all, you fading up pubes, dog. I mean, no, don't blow on my pellet, boy.
He's a fan.
Why for you, dog? But then he does this, like he wipes it off all like with a towel and. Nah, boy, you doing too much.
Listen.
You are doing too much. No.
Who gets hard just because the air, you know, is blowing? It's like, oh fuck, I'm not my game. I'm not gay. No, please go. Get the fuck back down. I will fuck you up. Beyonce. Kelly Rowland. Sierra.
My wife, no, not my wife. Not my wife. Beside this. Hey, nah, bro, like seriously.
Imagine that. That's just pretty funny.
No, but you see the white man, he looked like he's something out of Hitler's fucking time. With the haircut and then the twisty little motherfucking beard.
I wish I had a video to show y'all.
No, I
This is
swear to
mad
God,
funny.
bro.
I thought it was a joke.
No, it's not real. It's not a joke. It's actually real. It's a pubic region.
It's called balls. Some shit.
Yeah, it's like-
I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah.
Like that shit is crazy, bro. I was like, really? You giving haircuts for real, but like because at first I thought it was like, okay, I can understand it because you know women have the bikini waxing and everything, they go for all of that.
Yeah.
Understood. You know what I'm saying? Whatever, cool. Whatever you do. Until he said, nah, like, boy.
We ain't going there.
No, bro, I'm not.
Hey, what you doing? What you doing?
And then the dude, no, bro. Yo, I'm like, what? Like, no, why
It's
for
just a
you,
little
dog?
bit of air.
Alright.
Why for you, dog?
It's just a little air. You'll like it.
Yeah, you looking like Mr. Robotnik and shit from off Sonic the Hedgehog. And
So
nah.
I gotta ask a question on something. It's completely off. Like both y'all don't even know. I'm gonna put this segment on right now.
Okay.
Y'all don't even know. So,
So we're off of Danny.
Y'all gonna get.
We're off of Danny.
So-
We gonna be off of
Yeah,
that.
get the ang out of here. Get the ang out of here.
Alright.
Not even the boomerang.
We gonna be out for that for a second.
Oh my God.
I'm
this is
gonna
too
bring
funny.
something in,
I
right?
did.
I'm gonna bring something in, right? And I wanna ask y'all opinion on what y'all think.
Alright, here we go. Here go
How
the
that
bullshit.
do, you know what I mean?
Here go the bullshit.
It's a complete surprise, right?
Oh God.
Here go the
I love
bullshit.
surprises, but OMG.
It's not something that
Nigga, worried?
y'all know about.
I'm not worried. I just know this nigga gonna do some off the fly shit. I apologize for anything if it comes out wrong right now. Oh, this nigga here. Also, make sure you follow us on all the social medias. Like I said, we are trying to get to 100.
It's for her pleasure after all.
Whoa! Hey yo, I know where this is from. Hey yo!
No names.
Why did you come out of the vault with this, bro?
No names. It's just,
You wanted to surprise us.
No, honestly, this, okay.
Is that your hand?
Yes,
Yes, it
yes, that is.
Okay.
But
Oh, that's your face.
I know exactly where this is.
Okay.
I know who that is.
Okay.
no names.
Okay, and
She's chained up.
no,
Hold on.
hold up. And I know exactly what she did to deserve this.
Oh, she's getting a spanking.
Wow, I remember. Oh, damn, you showed half of her
You
face.
can't see your face.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you see that shit? Yeah, that's how you give spankings properly.
So
if
that
you
it was-
act up,
And you wiped it, okay? And
yeah, no, you have to rub it after you spank it. You cannot just leave it spanked. A good master will never just take a spanking. Now let's talk about it. Let's talk about these spankings, fellas. If you do not spank your wife or your girl, your bitch made. First of all, I don't care if I don't like that. They all like it. You fucking lying. I don't want to hear the bullshit.
Yeah.
If you take that ass and you spank it right and you rub it right, she's gonna act right.
Absolutely.
Okay?
She's gonna call you master.
She might call you master. She might call you daddy, zaddy, poppy as a backup.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
But damn, nigga.
yeah, I like that one. The
That's my
like
thing.
nigga. Yeah. Yo, if you ever have a girl call you nigga, like say it again.
Nigga.
Yeah, like that.
You're lying.
You know what I'm saying? All good.
I love
Now, ladies, don't be afraid of your spanking. Go ahead and take it like a big girl. Show him that you are truly submissive and you are truly strong.
All his.
So y'all like that.
I love it.
I like it a lot. It was a good surprise.
Good job, good job.
Good job.
So
Salute,
you know.
salute over there.
Thank you very
Drop the
much.
bomb.
You're talented with the spankings, by the way, and I'm at that. Very
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah.
Very good job.
The formage is absolutely amazing.
No, honestly, I'm gonna tell you right now.
Absolutely, it's
I'm
all
gonna
of the
tell
best.
no, we
Yes.
had to go through certain classes.
Absolutely.
Things had to be done
Yeah.
so that you know exactly what's going on. Okay,
Yes, it was
we
good.
can just go out there and start drawing blood. What the fuck is that?
You got to.
You have to build
The
your
right
technique,
amount of
fellas.
palmage and fingerage. I like.
By the way, my manager,
Alright.
remember who I told you about last week?
Yeah.
Yo, I think I might have just really opened up a whole new avenue for him and his wife. Like, honestly, I'm glad I could satisfy his wife.
True props.
Like, real talk.
You know, and that's what we're here for.
That's
Talk
exactly
your
what we're
shit.
here for.
Talk the shit that makes sense.
You know, I mean, you guys know what's up. Honestly, but no, honestly, I'm into pleasing your wives. Seriously.
That
Yes, we are. We train very well.
No, real talk.
You know, so that's why you should come out to Fantasy Nova show,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's more like a
It's a party.
party.
Fellas, it's
You know.
Get
taboo.
lit.
It's the launch party for Fantasy
Yeah.
Nova. Okay.
This Sunday,
Really?
This Sunday.
June 23rd,
Right.
8 p.m.
It's inside the Platinum Lounge, inside Goldfinger,
Yep.
Sunrise, Florida. Y'all go ahead and buy y'all tickets in
Rise
advance
yeah.
at
Guess who's
fantasynova.com.
gonna be there?
Who's gonna be there?
Guess who's gonna be there?
Oh,
City
her.
fucking skills.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not only that, you play a game with Snow.
Slaughtering them.
If you can make her squirt or scream, you get a free prize.
Got her face. You get it all show.
Hey, you wanted it.
It's on the air. Now she gotta do it.
Yeah, now she gotta do it. Yeah, look at you now.
Come on.
No, cause whose mom you wanted to talk about earlier? You think I forgot? You don't think I forgot?
Listen.
I'm done.
You done?
I'm done.
You finished or you done?
She can be alright. She can be done. She can be alright.
Done.
Whatever she wants.
Done.
Anyway.
Get out of your feelings, you a Libra. I don't wanna hear that.
Oh yeah.
This was our show for today, guys.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
For her pleasure. You got for her pleasure right now?
Yes, sex outside. I'm just saying, just fun sex. That's for
sex.
her pleasure. Yes, experimental sex. Everywhere in England.
Okay, so check me out. I got a
Keep it
playground
open-minded.
over here.
Keep it
I got a pool in my complex
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
And the winner,
Okay,
the
listen.
car.
don't
Let's
don't
say shift.
don't think about it so
Yeah,
much.
that's
You know,
right.
don't always think about the bedroom and the living room and the loo and the kitchen. There are other places.
The
Explore.
loo is the restroom, guys.
Oh yeah.
They sound better. The loo.
But
But
like,
yeah, that's for her pleasure. Women actually like the spontaneous and the exploring. We actually
so basically, I gotta take it back to when I was 15, 16.
basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you know.
You got a sex, not fuck. So
Right.
that's the difference this time.
Wait, I can't just wait. So I gotta have sex, not fuck.
I mean, you could still like
Spontaneous
do
sex.
other things, you know, like you could eat her pussy too while you're out. She can suck your dick while you're out, you know, just
No, I mean that you know, yeah, that's whatever, you know.
like,
Yeah.
for her pleasure.
So you tell me, hold up, ain't it fair season? Ain't it coming up that we got fairs coming up in Florida?
Oh, the
yeah,
fair
yeah, all of that shit.
Oh, the
Fairs
fair
are good.
shit.
Hey, yo, you wanna know where
I always want to be fingered in one of those places.
I want him to stop me at the top.
No, everybody wants to be stopped at the top.
I just don't have
Oh, no. You always, this is gonna be kind of crazy and weird, but you wanna know where I always wanted to have sex in? If it's at a fair?
Where?
The Gravitron, nigga.
Can't even move, man.
It's no, it's so much pressure. No!
I'm gonna stop in this position. Yeah, it's just stuck.
No, nigga, stop acting like you ain't never stood up on the Gravitron and all that shit, nigga. I'm a G. First of all, no, think about it. No, think about it. Yeah, no, you can pick it up.
That's what's happening.
No, she's gonna, you lay down, no, you lay down right there.
Only thing you can do is grab some titties.
Nah. What I'm trying to say is, y'all start off side by side, right? She's right here, she's my date, boom. Now all I gotta do is roll onto her, right? Hold up, listen.
Yeah, what's the $2 stuff?
Right, but hold up, listen, just listen to reason. Listen to reason and logic. Oh no, because I promise y'all,
I waited around
Listen to logic.
oh,
Go on,
shit.
now.
Yeah.
So Gravitron induces force going out, right?
Right.
So if I'm rolled over now and I'm in now, right? All I gotta do is lift up my pelvic bone. Once I lift up my pelvic bone, the force is gonna make me do what?
But they
Go right back in.
But think about
And you know how much force is coming behind that dick?
Sideways.
No, think about it.
sideways, right?
No, but listen, bro.
Your
See,
penis and everything.
y'all didn't even give it a chance to think about it. Y'all didn't even
Thinking about it.
Oh, shit.
Yo, no, it's not a lot of shit. Think about no, because you didn't even comment on the fact that I'm telling you the force that is coming behind that penis, behind that body whip.
Oh, nice.
It's so going
You
to
know what?
put it in your
I
life.
have to force me with you.
Fucking right. I want to have Star Wars sex. You fucking around.
I don't think I can do that part.
Shit. Call me the real Star Lord after that, nigga. Fuck you.
Yeah, it's for her pleasure.
Anyway.
I like it.
Let me say it. This is coming to the end of the show.
Yeah, man. See,
We
they
can go all
hate
night.
because they didn't come up with that.
Well,
that
not hating, that
last
shit
idea.
was
That's just difficult.
It's not dumb. It's not dumb.
That's it. You know how many?
And it's not difficult.
Okay.
Because
How many energy takes to go against the force?
The fair
no, I kneeled up. I stood up in the Gravitron on the fucking thing when it went straight up.
Yeah,
Y'all are ducks. Y'all ain't got no imagination.
No, they're that. The fair is coming.
Yeah.
Make it happen and get back to
No,
us.
they actually they discontinued the
I'll give you a
Gravitron.
Snapchat man so you can record that shit. I want to see it.
No,
Like, this was a bad idea.
they trying to make you think. They
sounds
see it. They have no
sounds
imagination.
good.
I have plenty of imagination.
No, not when it comes to this. Y'all suck. Y'all both Libras. Y'all want that other shit.
I get it. I do.
Nah.
I get the force. I get it. But you can't move. It goes like this.
Maybe you can't move.
But
That's the whole point. For you not to move. So she can't push you
The
out.
whole parents gonna fuck up.
just tie me. Just tie me up.
No, I don't have to tie you.
You know.
I don't have to tie you. The force is holding your hands down from me. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got to do nothing.
But it's pushing you against it. I'm like, okay.
The force be with
Like,
You don't need to breathe when you're taking this.
casket in here.
Yeah, I'm putting you in the casket with the tombstone. Anyway, man, we sign off. Alright, let's talk your shit. Tune in every Wednesday. We'll be right here, man. Y'all leave the comments and subscribe. Holla.
Bye.
on stem. No one feed my fam. I need people on stem. People walk with me like them. I need people on the stem. Wanna be a bit time like men. I need people on the stem.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy DJ Biggs. Hello. Yeah, man, I'm coming to you straight from my Talk Your Shit set. Remember, click and watch our playbacks all on our channel right now, as well as catch our live broadcast each and every Wednesday at 10 p.m. You already know we bring you the juiciest topics of sexual news, a little bit of topics on the raunchy, but you already know we here to have fun, man. Make sure you tune in to Talk Your Shit. We coming to you, like I said, each and every Wednesday. Holla back at me.